Hi everyone, my name is Tony and I am so excited to be here. I'm a student studying computer science at the University of Minnesota, and one of the cool things that I did in one of my classes was building a Minesweeper project. Now you might be asking, why should I be excited about this? Like, I don't even know how to code a Minesweeper game. Well, I'm glad that you asked that question, because who here has played Minesweeper before? Now, who here has built a Minesweeper game before? Yeah, I see less hands going up for that second question. But the reason why you guys should be excited about this is because by learning how to code, you guys are able to learn about the different parts that build a game. And today we're actually going to be talking about one of the parts that I used in coding to build this Minesweeper game. Now, today's topic is for loops in Python. My target audience for this presentation are 10 to 12-year-olds. Now, with that being said, let's go. So, the first question that I have for you guys is that the first question that I have is, do you guys like apples? Yeah, who doesn't like apples? I mean, it's a very healthy fruit to eat in the morning, and it's a great way to start off the day. Now, with that being said, imagine if you were counting how many apples are in the fridge. Let's say that someone tells you to count the number of apples that you have because that person wants to pick up more apples from the grocery store and they want to know how many apples they should pick up. So, here's usually how we count apples in the fridge. So, the first step is to count the first apple in the fridge. Usually, this involves finding where the apples are in the fridge. The second step is, counting the rest of the apples that are in the bag or in the fridge until you don't have any apples left. The third step is keeping track of how many total apples are actually in the fridge. Let's say that I'm counting the apples on the screen right now. Now, the apples are on the screen, on the four corners of the screen. Now, the first apple is here. So this is the first apple. This would be step one, where I'm counting the first apple and I'm finding the location of that apple. Now, the second step is to count the rest of the apples. So this is the first apple, this is the second apple, this is the third apple, and this is the fourth apple. Now, the final step is to keep track of how many total apples I actually have. So in this case, I have four apples on the screen. Now let's actually talk about what for loops are and what they actually do. So for loops in Python. For loops in Python are similar to counting apples because they can keep track of the number of items. These loops can also be used to repeat an action over a set of items. Now for today's lesson, I just want to focus on the first sentence because that gives you like a great way of understanding what for loops do in Python, which is really the goal of today's session. Now, as you can see, there's three steps in a for loop, just like there's three steps in counting apples. So you can already see how similar these two are. So for a for loop, the first step is the loop counts the first item. Usually the loop is counting items in a list. A list is a set of items. And the second step is the loop continues counting items until you reach the last item in the list. So usually this would be like usually the list starts at the first item and then it takes its time to count all of the other items, and then once it reaches the last item, that's when it's done counting. And then the final step is that after all of the items are counted, the loop ends. Now there's different ways that you can track how many items are actually in the list. Sorry, I apologize. I even make mistakes. But there are multiple ways to keep track of how many items the loop counted. But for now, let's just say that we have a variable that keeps track of that. A variable is a name that has a value, and you're able to store any value in that name. That's the simplest definition of a variable in Python. So here's an actual example of counting apples in Python. So as you can see here, we have a list of apples. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We have 7 apples in this list. Now, here's the variable that I was talking about. It's a name that stores a value. That's a better way to put it. So right now we have 0 apples because we don't know how many apples we have because we haven't performed the first step, which is finding where the apples are. Now, here's the for loop. It's a very simple for loop right now. It has the main line of code here, and then this is the for loop keeping track of how many items it's counting. So, as you can see, it says for apple and apples. Now, the best way to understand this is that an apple is an individual item, and apples is the set of items in total. So apples is actually this list. There's 7 apples in total in this list. And for an apple, this is an individual item. Now, for every time the for loop runs in this program, it actually keeps track of how many apples are in this list. So it's performing this step at the beginning of the list when it's looping through the apples list for the first time. So when it counts this apple, it's actually performing the first step. And then it performs the second step when it counts this item in the list. And this step gets repeated until it reaches the very end of the list, which is here. So the first step is executed here, and the second step is executed here, 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 and here. Now for the third step would be here, because this is printing the total number of apples that are being stored in the list. I also forgot to mention that for the second step, this is actually the place where it actually keeps track of the number of apples, where it actually counts them. You know, this is where that second step takes place, along with this. But this is the best way to think about it. So here's where the third step takes place, where it returns the number of apples, which is essentially you keeping track of the apples in real life. Now, quick check. Besides apples, what else can we count in a Python loop? Yeah, you. Oh, that's a great idea. That's a great idea. We can definitely count bananas, eggs, or we can even count the number of cars that we have in a Python loop. Yeah, those are great ideas. Yeah, you guys are very smart thinkers. I like how you guys are learning so fast. This is why I'm excited to be here. Now, to wrap up the lesson today, for loops in Python are a way to count the number of items. It's the same as counting the number of items in real life. Whether you're counting dogs, cats, cars, bananas, eggs, or, of course, you know, the example that we used in today's slideshow, apples. You know, you can count these items in a Python loop the same way that you count them in real life. It just takes 3 steps. First, finding where the first item is, and then after you find where the first item is, that's when you start counting. And then second, once you start counting, you want to continue counting until you count all of the items in that set of items. Like if you have a bag of apples, you want to count until there's no more apples in the bag anymore. The third step is to keep track of how many total apples are actually in that bag. So after you're done counting, you want to remember, write down, or tell someone else about how many apples are actually in that bag. Those are the 3 steps to counting. And those are the 3 steps that you can think about when you're using Python loops or when you're using them for counting purposes. Now, thank you for coming to my lesson. I greatly appreciate all of you guys. I know that you guys have bright futures, and I know that you guys are very enthusiastic about learning Python. I hope that everyone has a great day. It was great to meet you guys. Bye.